Today we're going to be talking all about pockets because what is a junk journal if it doesn't have a pocket? And when I was looking through my journals to show you some ideas and examples of how I use pockets within my own journals, I realized that there are four main ways or four approaches, I suppose, that I take to adding pockets to my own junk journals. And of course, there are so many different ways that you can add pockets to your journals to create extra space. So this is just the way that I like to do it within my own journals. And if you're new here, hi, my name is Meg. I make videos about junk journaling, art journaling, and creativity. So if you like journaling, then subscribe so you don't miss future videos from me. This is actually part of a little series that I've been doing where I'm showing lots of different ideas and examples from my previous journals. So we've talked about backgrounds and we've also talked about tip-in ideas as well. So let's dive into the first way that I like to include pockets within my journals, which is using a transparent or translucent layer to create a bit of a see-through effect. So you can see this in an example here where this is tipped in, but it is a pocket where I've got a little slot there to add in an extra piece of paper, and you can see I've cut it out so that there is a see-through layer here of the vellum, and that way then you can see whatever you put into the pocket. But with it being vellum, it's a little bit ghosted, so it doesn't quite get in the way the same way as if it was completely see-through. But I think I enjoy this translucent element because you don't lose whatever you put in the pocket, because sometimes I feel like I will put things in a pocket in a journal and it can kind of be easy to forget that it's there, if that makes sense. So I just figured that having the translucent element, whether it's part of the pocket or even like this where I've actually used pretty much the entire page here. So this was originally the page and I just cut out this section here and chopped off all the rest that was around it. And then I added this vellum piece to the back of it and I stitched along here, and then I stapled it on the top and the bottom to create the pocket. And so that way then you can see what is still in the pocket, but I actually added, I think this was some wrapping paper that is the backing of this that I must have got from a Christmas present, because this is one of my junk journal January, because I always collect wrapping paper around this time of year, of course. So I used that as my backdrop just because it had quite a nice bold pattern that wasn't too intricate, so everything didn't get lost. This here from my paint sample journal is another example where I've used a glassine bag and I've actually included it as a full page pocket. So I've used the transparent layer as the page itself. I've just tipped it in here on both sides, and that way then I've got a bit of an interesting shaped pocket. I think my idea was to do like a long tag on this, and I just have this book piece in here now just to show you that you can still obviously see through to what is in the pocket. So here I've got the beginnings of a collage on the front, and then on the back I actually paper clipped just a little collage tag here so that I didn't have to commit to actually sticking anything down on the front here. And if you've been here a little while, you might remember this paint sample journal and you might be thinking, oh my goodness, it's seeing the light of day. Meg hasn't forgotten that she owns this journal. I kind of lost my way a little bit with this. I really loved working in it, but I just found that, I don't know, I wasn't really feeling inspired to work in it. And maybe I feel like I need to give it a little bit of a refresh, maybe change up some of the pages, I don't know. Got to a place where I was a bit stuck and I wasn't quite sure what to do, so maybe we will revive this somehow. Let me know if you have any ideas for when you've kind of lost your way with a journal a little bit and the things that you do. This here is another example of a translucent effect on a pocket where I've cut a section out of the middle here, so similar to how there was a cutout section on this page. And this one is actually a lot smaller than the page itself, so unlike the one that was a sort of full transparent effect across the whole page, I've used it to add just this little tag here, so you can see I actually added a little bird image there on a little collaged tag, and then that way then it just tucks into here. So this kind of becomes part of the page itself, because once you add it in there, it then becomes part of the wider collage, but you can still take it in and out of there with the little piece of string attached to it. So that's another way that you can include a pocket that I think feels a little bit more flat in a way, because it's almost like part of the page itself rather than being something extra. And actually that reminds me of another example that is in this journal, that I actually made a page here that has this sort of layered translucent effect. So I added a couple of sheets of vellum here that are layered on top of one another, and then I just tore them along the edge here to create this effect. And the way that I added these to the page was actually just to stitch along the top and along the bottom, which is something that I really like to do to add a pocket when you just want to add it maybe along the side or along the bottom of a page, is you can just stitch along the edges that you want to attach to the page rather than using sellotape or washi or something like that. And I did add just a staple for some reinforcement, but this just creates a really interesting effect because I have this collaged postcard here that I've tucked in behind here, but you could also add it to this one here. I think my intention was to have a couple of things, so I could have, like, you know, another thing in here like this, for example, to have as a sort of like layered effect. But I just thought that that was quite a fun concept, and I don't know, maybe that's something that I need to revisit. I feel like I do a lot of, like, not random ideas, but when I was doing the junk journal challenges, it did kind of force me to do things that I might not otherwise do in my journals. And so you can see here another example of the stitching where this creates a pocket. So I'll just show you like this. So this was just on a coffee cup sleeve, and I've just turned it then into a pocket. So you don't have to have any fancy materials to make a pocket either. You can literally just use a coffee cup sleeve or a piece of cardboard or whatever you have lying around, and then just stitch it along the edges here to create the little like pocket tuck space there. And so speaking about using upcycled elements, because I seem to have transitioned from talking about translucent pockets to talking about these little stitched upcycled pockets, so consider that a bonus idea for you. The next thing that I've noticed I do a lot with my pockets is using brown paper. So this one here I wanted to show you. This is from a no-sew journal that I made I think a couple of years ago now, and the way that I constructed it, so it was a concertina fold here, but one of the first pieces that I used to stick to the cover was actually a paper bag. You can see here I ended up using the full bag. It comes out to around about here, and what I ended up doing was cutting into the bottom of the paper bag here so that it created a bit of an inner pocket for this journal. And I just used a piece of washi tape here. Now you could do like a more intricate fancy closure with maybe like a brad or you know, something to keep it closed, but I just popped a piece of washi tape on there for now, so I can always revisit that if I want to. But this was just a way to incorporate a pocket inside the journal. Now let me try and show you this without everything going everywhere. So I've got a little zine that's in here because this project was I made the no-sew journal, and then I made a bunch of like little mini no-sew journals as like the projects within it. So that was the initial thing. I wanted something to be able to keep this journal within this main journal. But you can see here the pocket, because I've used the paper bag, it actually goes all the way through on both sides of this page. So this is a really interesting concept, I think, for being able to tuck something larger into your journal if you wanted to have something going across both sides that you can then obviously fold, because you will have to close the book, but it just gives you a lot more space. And I just really like the fact that you get that nod to the original paper bag, and then you're able to use it as a page as well as a pocket. So that's a really fun way to incorporate a pocket, not just on top of your page but within your journal pages itself, is to use paper bags, whether you're doing a no-sew journal like this or whether you're binding your journal more traditionally and just having the pages, is to use paper bags like this, so you can just have them open up into built-in pockets. And it's a bit like making pockets on easy mode, because you don't actually have to make the pocket, they're already there with the paper bag itself. And of course, speaking of brown paper, that's one thing that I love to use in my journals, so much so that I actually made an entire journal just out of brown paper. And this brown paper pocket that I made was just really simple, using a paper bag here. So you can see I just folded it in on itself on the corner here to create this easy tuck spot. So you could glue this down into your book and have it be just a little pocket tuck spot there. You could tip it in so that it sort of folds out and you can use the back of it. But what I did was I just added it here with a paper clip, and I decorated the front of it here, as you can see. And then I've actually tucked in a bunch of different tags, because I wanted to do like a layered tag. So I just collected a few different ones. So that's something I definitely need to revisit. But I just tucked those in there, and you can just see using the paper clip there, it just gives a nice little extra way to add something to your journal. You don't have to commit to actually sticking it into the pages of your journal. So I think using brown paper in any way, but especially with pockets, is one of my favorite ways to add pockets to my journals. So the third way that I add pockets to my journals is obviously a classic, and that is just to use envelopes. And of course these will be in many different shapes and sizes with how you can use them in your journal. So you can just chop off the top of the envelope like I have done with this one, and then tip it in with some washi tape here, and your page has an inbuilt pocket. So this is an example where I've used the entire page to become a pocket, and I've been able to add a little tag here, collage on the front, and then I've worked across the entire back of the pocket here. So this almost looks like a page in itself rather than necessarily something I've added as an envelope. But I've also included pockets in smaller ways in my journals as well. So this example here, the page was vellum, and I used this little pink envelope here. I actually glued it in so you can see the back of the envelope is glued down, and that way then this envelope became the little focal point of the collage that I did on the front here, just with some stitching and some tea dyeing and things like that. I really love this pocket. I think it's so sweet, and that way then it looks like a page in itself, but then it also has a little secret hidden pocket in a way. So it's not immediately obvious that it is a pocket. Like, it can work on its own as just a little collage, but I tucked in here just a little tag. So I think this was a clothing tag that was pink, so of course I was going to save it, and I just collaged on the front of it here and then just tucked it in to this little spot here. And I've also created pockets where I haven't used the main section of an envelope. I've actually made it into a little bit of a tuck spot. I've just used the section that you use to close the envelope, and this is an example from Junk Journal January that I did a couple of years ago. And this is a little bit of a mix between using envelopes and also the fourth way that I like to use pockets, which is having them as little inbuilt tuck spots within a page. So this page here that I did for one of the Junk Journal January prompts is honestly probably one of my favorites. I really love the way that, even though this is quite busy, I really like the colors I think that I used. And I have this little section here which you can see is the shape of the envelope, and I stapled this to the page just along the edge here, and as you can see that way there, it creates this little tuck spot which I added this little tag to. And I just think that this is a really nice way to add a pocket that looks built into your page. I did also add this bright pink paper clip that I'm not sure where it came from, but it kind of matched some of the other colors that I had on the page, so that just helps to keep this nice and secure, because I don't think this top edge here is glued down or anything. I just did the stapling along the edge, and you can see then just creates the little pocket, but again, it doesn't detract from the rest of the page. And I think this is maybe the way that I want to explore doing pockets more, where they are part of the page, because I think sometimes I struggle a little bit with doing a pocket on a page and then it kind of like getting in the way of what I wanted to do on the page. So I definitely think I want to try and explore more of this, you know, having things tucked into the page but still looking like a full page. So this is one of the examples of this. And then I also have from another journal, this one here, this little square one, where I actually stitched in, you might be noticing a theme, I love to do little bits of hand stitching in my journals, but I stitched in this tag here along the side that I had collaged, and that way then again it creates this little tuck spot, this little pocket where you can add extra things into your journal pages, but it doesn't get in the way of anything else. Like this still looks like a full page on its own, but you still have that space to add extra things into it. So I definitely think I am drawn more to pockets in disguise, I guess, ones that don't immediately look like they're taking over the page, because I've just remembered actually whilst I've picked up this journal here that this is another example of the brown paper bag pockets, because this was just a little bag here, and I cut it in such a way that you still have this opening here, but I just sort of collaged and painted on the front of it and then tipped it in to the journal. So again, it doesn't detract from the page, it kind of becomes part of it, and then you still have this pocket here. So those are the ways that I like to use pockets within my journals. I'd love to know how you include pockets in your journals, the things that you include in them, your favourite ways to add them. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.